recording, and then I'll actually share my screen as well. There we go. Okay. Ta-da. All right, let me see, make sure this is recording. Cool. And so this is basically the project. I'll give you guys a second to let me know if you guys have started the download at least. Just give me the thumbs up in the workshop if you started the download or whatever. All right. And now we wait. All right, yeah, well, Cougar Blue Day is still definitely going on. Someone's out there with a megaphone, and I can definitely hear them. Yeah, let me know if you're having trouble, too. I should have made it public. Are we waiting for Unity to load now, or are we still downloading?
Yeah, it takes a long time to do.
No, I get you. Yeah, I'm just trying to make sure.
I just haven't gotten around to
Gotcha.
getting it open.
All right, cool. Are you guys at least are you guys stuck on a loading screen?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll go ahead and explain some things then. So I just made two scenes basically. One is the actual game itself, which is just a little guy moving around. And then I have a pause menu. I can save this right here, move over here, load it, and then it'll put me back right there. I have an exit, which I'll put me right back here. Load game will, of course, load the game that I just saved. And then new game will put me right back here because that's where that's the initial scene. And the logic sort of for that, where I'm saving the game and loading it and then also making a new one, is sort of, I guess, threefold. We have basically two scripts that are responsible for saving. And the actual, is that a Malcolm? That's a Malcolm. Oh, I know, it's Cougar Blue Day. It's crazy. I had trouble getting staff parking. Did you run here?
No.
Okay, I was saying you look a little sweaty. Yeah. All right. Yeah, I'll plug this back in then. I was like, I wouldn't blame blame whoever, or I wouldn't blame you if there was nobody coming in person today, because Cougar Blue Day, man. You gotta go bathroom. They're just downloading the game, so it's fine. Okay. All right, so we have sort of two different parts of this. We have, I don't know why, what's going on. Okay, there we go. This is, hold on a second. Okay, that makes sense. So I just have two functions that I've made inside of each other, basically. There's, because I'm calling, what is it? I'm calling load player, from here, which will gather the data and actually like put it back in. And that's why I have load player here. It doesn't actually like get the file itself. It calls the function that gets the file from save game state, and then puts it into the player, which is why we have the load player inside of the movement controller. And then we also have save player, which just sends a command to the save game state. And so save game state is actually the logic responsible for saving the game, because we have an actual file that we're creating using all this fancy stuff. We're going to be using this library right here for all that. But it'll actually save a binary folder in this nice application data path. And so the nice thing about this data path is that it's linked directly with Unity, so we don't actually have to, or normally you'd have to actually specify a string, but Unity has this nice little built-in feature, and it helps us manage it. And so we actually have the save and load player data, so we're actually getting the data from the file here. We're not necessarily inserting it into the game yet. That's where the movement controller comes in. And then running back even further up, we're actually just loading and saving the scenes. So we save which scene we're in, not necessarily all the data in the scene, if that makes sense. So let me open up the sample scene. Go and save. So this is the default scene. And so if I said, let's load the scene, it would just load this, and it wouldn't actually save where the character's position is, or let's say I had enemies in here, it wouldn't save where the enemies were or how many there were, whatever, right? And so this would just load the scene, but then of course we have the save game state, which actually would load in or get the information for all those enemies and our players' position and stuff like that. And then we have inside of our actual movement controller, and presumably inside of our enemies controller, we would have a save player and load player, or load enemy, save enemy functions that would actually insert the data into the objects themselves. And sort of, that's why I say it's threefold, because you're not really just saving one thing, you're saving different things in different ways, which just makes it very confusing, unfortunately. But that's just how it's sort of built right for us. We could, you don't have to open the door slowly. You can just go in. So we have, what is it? Like I said, the data for the player and the actual scene being saved here. And we could save this data to a player pref, but we would end up loading a file anyway. And so it's not really, wouldn't make sense unless you had multiple game states or multiple games to save. Then you could save like the names or whatever, the file location specifically. But that's really the only application for player prefs, unfortunately, is like to save the scene names so you can load them, and then actually save the data relative to the scene, or relative to the runtime environment or whatever. That's a big word. Relative to the game that you're currently playing, or want to load, instead of instead of just the basic scene itself, which would just be this every time if you click the load button. So that was a lot at once. I'm going to go slow now. We can actually run through the code of this and explain sort of more in depth what all of this actually means. Do you guys have the project open by chance, or is it officially?
Yep.
All right, cool. And then I'm going to wait for Wabi or Esteban. Also give me a thumbs up somewhere.
Yeah, it works.
All right, cool. Thank you. Okay. So let's do this. I'm going to go to, let me see. I'm going to start with what player prefs kind of are, and then we can move through there. So you know how we just covered dictionaries last sort of lecture style meeting we had? That's exactly what player preferences are, but they store it to a file instead of to a local or a variable. And so what that means is we can actually desave between play sessions. So let's say I play this and give it a whole minute, I guess. Keep going. There we go. Okay. So if I save this right here, and if I go over here, I want to exit the game. I'm going to stop playing, and I'm going to play again. Doo-doo. There we go. Okay. Since it opened with the scene, I'm already here, but it's fine. Basically, what I was trying to show is that it saves. It's persistent. It saves between play sessions. So if I were to exit and then say load game, it would put me back there because of the data. I think the reason for that putting me there is because I don't have what is it? When I just play it directly in the scene, it's gonna call the it's not gonna call the load game function. It's just gonna do like on the on start command from movement controller. And so since we don't actually say whether or not it's a new game, it'll just magically load the player. So if we actually, let me demonstrate this more properly. Go to main menu. Oh. Okay, gotcha. Wait a minute again, I guess. That's going to be real annoying if that does that every time. Okay. So if we actually load the game, you'll see it'll put us back here, which means that basically it's persistent. We could shut down the entirety of Unity here and open it back up, and it would still be able to load the scene. Back here, I could save it here, exit, and then load game as well. And so that was just demonstrating that it actually works, right? So we have, let's see. Right. So we have the actions linked to the buttons, right? And so what we...
The stream is frozen.
Oh, the stream is
I'm
frozen?
not sure if you guys can see it.
I do have a little orange check mark here. Yeah, reduced video or audio quality. That's on me. I think it's just because there's Cougar Blue Day has so many people here. It's chopping down. Let me see what kind of cell service I have here. Because it says I'm at 2 bars on my phone and I'm connected to CSUSM. I don't know if this is going to be a good idea, but I'm going to try it. I'm going to do a hotspot. And hopefully that'll help you guys. Oh yeah, now I have no internet. Fun. All right, I should be back. Hello?
Yep.
Is that better or worse? About the same?
Better for me. So.
All right.
Fix.
Let me know if it downgrades the video quality at any point, and I'll switch back over to Wi-Fi maybe. We're just kind of having to roll with it, unfortunately. Can I get a hello real quick to make sure that my internet's working?
Yep.
Okay, cool. I see you guys. I just want to make sure that I'm not like, because Discord will do that thing where it says you're in the call, but you're not actually. All right. Back to this. So we have the new game function, and all I'm doing here is that I'm actually loading the scene, right? So I have the scene manager, which comes from scene management, this library, and all it does, like I said before, is it just loads the scene. So it doesn't actually load the data. So what we want to do is you'll notice the main difference between here is that when we actually call this function, for one, we actually find we have player preferences and we're saving it to a key, right? Like I said, it's like a dictionary, but it's a file instead of a local variable.
I have a quick question.
Uh-huh.
So load scene, it takes 2 arguments. Normally, I just use 1 argument for it. So like sample scene's the actual scene. What's load scene mode dot single?
So that's the thing. There's 2 load scene modes. And so it's kind of because it can treat them like prefabs. So we have single and then we have additive. And so load scene mode just stands for whether or not you want to load only this or you want to load this on top of this. And so basically what I'm trying to say here is, let's say you have an open world and you want to generate different chunks of that world. You would, instead of just loading scene single, you would load it additively. and that would make it so that you would load the chunk. And so because it treats it, scenes are really just a huge batch of prefabs, but it's a little bit different in that instead of instantiating it, you have all these fancy load methods for scenes. And so that's all it means. It means, do we want to get rid of everything else when we load it, or do we just want to add this on top of what we have already loaded? And so if I made this additive, it would load both the play scene and the and the menu scene at the same time. Basically, if I change it to additive. I hope that makes sense. Okay. I'm going to assume that either made good sense or
So,
none at all.
like normally when you use load scene, it takes it like an integer to like on the build or your name of the scene.
Okay,
All
yeah.
of that.
So there's two ways you can load a scene. Is you can name it, load it by string, which you just takes the string name of the scene itself. So I have two scenes here, main
I
menu.
know that part.
Yeah.
And I also know you can put an integer in there.
Yeah, and I'll
to-
show you the integers
for
in a
the
second
build.
here. I can show you the integers. Give me a second. I have to wait for this whole ordeal. My computer's not liking me because I'm recording, streaming, and I have my, the HDMI output plugged in right now. So I believe it's build settings, and we have, there we go. So scenes and build, and you'll see they have sample scene and main menu, but they have a number associated with them. So if I said, instead of saying sample scene, I could say load 0, and that's how you would do that. They have main menu as well, which would be load 1. I don't know if you guys can see that. I can try to make it bigger. I think, text size is just going to remain the same either way. Okay. Anyway, that window is in the build settings. So it's in file, build settings, and it's scenes and build up here. And so that's the difference basically, is you have, for one, you have the load scene, which you can do single, removes everything else, or additively, adds on top of current scene. And then there's also, of course, like you were just explaining, string load scene by name, or you can you can load scene by by number from build settings. And so let me cover. I was going to cover player prefs right before the internet went out on me. So we'll go ahead and I'll explain player prefs. So like I was explaining before, it's like a dictionary in that you have keys associated with this. So let me do. And the thing is, you can store any kind of data, but the first key element is always a string, and so it's like just like before, it's like a string and an object, because we can actually load anything into it realistically. And actually, so the thing is, I installed this nice little package from the asset store. Hopefully, you guys have it too. I'll show you how to add this. If you guys have it open, you can follow along. Man, this is going to get really annoying if it keeps doing it. Come on. There we go. Okay. So, right here, under Plastic SCM, we have Player Prefs Editor. I already have it open, so I'm not going to open it quite yet. But I have this right here. And so this will actually show you your player preferences. So you could, the nice thing about this tool is it allows you to add them manually. Normally, Unity has you only saving them through code. But you can see that we have this level saved key and this value, and so it's just the string value of the scene. And so let's say if we saved in the main menu, even though there's not the functionality to do that right now, let's say we saved in the main menu, it would change this sample scene to main menu. Or let's say if we want to do integers, it would say save scene 0, right? And now I was considering using this as well, as you could specify different scene like levels to be saved. So let's say you had like several levels and you wanted to have, or several play sessions rather, and you had different saves for all of them. You could load or hypothetically put more keys and key pairs in here, and then load specific or load the data relative to that scene. As well as you could also store even maybe make a dictionary for the save files that you're making for not the scene but the actual play state at the current time. And you could also and have that link to a specific file address like we have here, but here it's always player.data. And so that's sort of a way to think about it. And so we have player prefs add-on from Unity recommended. Just because, for one, it allows you to link it before you actually get into the game. So let's say you wanted to, Let's say you wanted to have a sort of even a level select screen, right? If you even wanted to have something as simple as a level select screen, you could go in here and then save the scene keys, key pairs in here. Anyway, so let's see. One thing I'm doing is we have the actual static class, which is this save game state. And it actually saves the information responsible for or in the actual scene itself at the current time. And so, as you know, we are using the binary formatter, and honestly, don't even try to remember it. Just look this up. It's way too long. But long story short, what we're doing here is I have this Boolean, which will tell us if it's a new game or not. And then we can access this from anywhere to tell us whether or not we should be loading the data. Hypothetically, you could make this an integer or a enum, as we explained beforehand, or as we explained, last week. And you could have this set to a specific name of a instance of a, what am I trying to say? You could have it that enum or integer link to a specific save state, if that makes sense. So let's say you save twice, right? You would want to load. You wouldn't want to just specify new game or not. You would also want to specify which instance of the scene you're loading, because you could be in the same level and have two saves in the same level. And so that's sort of the idea behind that. We also have, let's see. And so, yeah, I'll just cover real quick binary formatters. So binary formatter is basically a class that's going to do a lot of work for us, quite frankly. For one, when we actually save the data, we're going to be using this formatter to, well, it says it right there, serialize the actual, data into a file for us. We also want to make sure we're closing out our file stream. So you guys probably recognize file stream or fstream even from C++. C# also has sort of an application just like it from system.io called FileStream. And so you can see, for one, we make a string path, which is just the name of our file location, and that's it. But then we also have actually the file stream itself, which is also a class, which we're going to make an instance of, which is going to take in the path and this file mode. And so we have, I think there's two file modes. There's file mode. There's two I know of: create and file mode .append, I believe is what it's called. Either way, it's just like we had over here with the scene or with single and additive. It's like whether or not you want to change the data from the save file or you want to create a whole new file. And so right now we're just creating whole new files. Ideally, you would have some sort of, if this file already exists, append it instead of create a new one. But you can see here as well we have player data. And this is just a struct that stores the data inside the player. And I'll show you that in a second here. But I want to finish out the save player method. And so it's literally just a struct which we create, which we construct, that it stores positional data. And also health. I never got around to adding enemies to this game, unfortunately. But we have, what is it? At least you can see an example of loading an entity. I will say, right now I have it so that the character is always like serialized, as in it's or the data is always in, or the data always knows what and where the character is. But if you were spawning enemies, you wouldn't necessarily be able to know what and where they are by default. So you'd have to find them in the scene. Like ideally, you would put them inside of a list that you could pass into a class similar to this, which would save the enemy's data, not just the player's data. So of course, like I said, we have the formatter, which serializes it into a file. And then we close the stream out just because we're going to get segmentation faults and things similar to that or of that nature. And then, of course, load player is basically the inverse, right? We're now taking the path of the file. We're checking if it exists, of course. But we're going to make a new binary formatter, a new stream. And this time we're doing open, right? There we go. File mode open. And it's literally just the inverse. We're instead of serializing it, we're deserializing it back into player data. And this basically, what this as says is basically it's just a cast. So you know how you can do, what is it? 10 into a float to make it like, or that was inverse right there. Should have been, I don't know if it necessarily matters, but to make it 10.0, right? Or something of that nature. And so that's basically what that as statement does, is instead of having a multiplying it by the data type itself, you can just write as. We also have the stream close again, and then of course we're returning the data to the actual player. When we go in here, because we're loading it, we actually call, let me get rid of this debug so it makes it easier to see, and also that. Basically what we say is if it's not a new game, we're going to load this player, and this load player actually calls the function from save game state, which we were just in over here. And that'll hopefully make it so that, that will make it so that we actually put the data back into our character. Let me show you that struct I promised you guys. Give it a minute, I guess. There we go. Okay. Oh, no. There we go. Okay. So we actually have this script right here. And this script is just a struct, which has the data inside of it. So you can see very simple. This is important, though. The system serializable tells the compiler to make it, save the local data in a way that can be later taken and moved into a file, as we were doing, right? And so we have an array. Oh, that's an important thing too. You cannot save Unity specific data types. There is I saw on the Unity store, there is a plugin. I believe it costs $1 or $2 to save Unity that allows you to do this. But for our cases, I'm not sure you'll necessarily need it. Because as you guys probably know, a vector 3 is really just 3 floats. And then of course a vector 2 is to transform, has its own things. And so that's exactly what we're doing. We're just saving 3 floats relative to the X, Y, and Z. Since we're inputting we have the player already here, we can just take that out. And that's literally it for as far as the struct goes. It's literally just it's a class here, but you could make it a struct. It's interchangeable because of the way it is. It's not what is it? It's not necessarily. It doesn't have any constructors. It's just a struct. Oh, okay. And so let's see. This, of course. Right. So this timescale command. Let me cover this real quick. Some of you might already be familiar if you've messed around with it, but this is just to pause the game. What Unity has, I believe, I'm gonna have to try and find it real quick. Let me see. Unity has a inbuilt time system, right? And so that's why it calls update and fixed update, because it's linked to time. I will say update will still get called, but fixed update will not, and I'll tell you why in a second. So we have right here, we have fixed time step, which is basically just when to call fixed update. We have time scale, which is how fast or slow it's literally just a multiplier, right? So you multiply. This is a normalized value, which means it's from 0 to 1. And so you can probably go over that honestly. But realistically, it basically just acts as a multiplier. And so you could say if your time scale was 2, this would be called that many times, right? Let me do also this. Cool. And so what we actually can do is when we slow this down, what happens is our time.delta time becomes 0, right? And so anytime we set this time scale lower or higher, it can directly change the delta time. And of course, since many of our functions where we move actually rely on this delta time, it'll make it pause effectively because we're not able to move anything relative, or anytime we multiply by time delta time in our scripts, it'll prevent it from moving. So that's even the truth with fixed update. You'll see I can set, what is it? Let's do 2 things. Debug.log. This is probably gonna suck a lot of memory out of my computer, but we'll try this. We'll just call this test update, and we'll call this one, I'll go down here and make a void fixed update, and fixed update. Cool. And then now if I play this, give it a minute, I guess, right? What you'll see is that update should still get called, but fixed update will not get called. And that's, of course, because of our time. The time fixed update relies on time. And so when we set time scale to 0, it's going to negate that. There we go. Okay, new game. And so I have what I do is when I pause, I set time to 0. And so let's pause that, and you'll see we just have test update getting called right now. If I unpause, you'll see fixed update gets called in here every now and again as well. And so you can sort of see that directly now. I'm going to go ahead and comment both those out so they're not sucking up resources on my computer. But we have, actually, hold on, let me do that for you guys. And so let's see. Right, so like I said before, we're just loading the position from 3 floats. We have the actual load player class, which gets the data. And then we have, yeah, okay. What have I not covered yet? Let's see. I'm pretty sure that was luckily everything. I think it was just that it took a while to learn everything. Since you guys now have all this code, I just recommend when you're building these systems for yourself to go through and see. I'll add a lot more comments so you guys can get an idea of what things actually do here. But hopefully this is all you need. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to spend like the next 30 minutes going through this and commenting it so that when you come back to this, you have a jumping off point to understand. I've also included a bunch of tutorial links up top here for each different system that I built or based these systems off of. So you guys can hopefully get an idea there too. Obviously we have Brackeys, and then we have Speed Tutor as well. This is just a suggestion for if you wanted to make multiple load games. I was saying, like I think I've already mentioned this, but you could add different key name pairs and different file locations to that dictionary, or the player preferences dictionary, and that would allow you to that would allow you to have the path files, or the path strings, sorry, of the different files, so you could have multiple save states in the first place. And hopefully that works for you guys. I'm going to go ahead, like I said, I'm going to leave it up to you guys to mess around with it if you want. I'm going to go ahead and comment some things on here to give you a better idea of what everything does. and then hopefully, like I said, you'll reach out if you have questions.
Did you go over new game yet? I don't remember.
So all new game does is it's the same thing as load game, except it changes this boolean, which makes it so it doesn't load the file. So there's nothing loading specific to new game. It just says don't load these files, basically. And I'll show you this real quick, but I just have, so you see this load scene, and then
Yeah, it looks
the
exactly the same except for the boolean.
right, yeah. This is, so you'll see even we have this here too. The only difference between these two is for here I set it up so that we could have different level names if we wanted to. Let's say like if we had 4 levels, we could save in a different level and then load it back up. But realistically, you could call the same line of code here in load game because there's only one scene, and it'd be perfectly fine. I will say when we call new game load scene, and then right, okay. The boolean that we do here is just for that when we on start in the movement controller. The movement controller is basically just stores all the data for the player. I was just kind of lazy and I was like, all right, I'm going to write all this inside of movement controller, which is not necessarily bad coding practice. I would just recommend, hold on, let me move these to a place where they're not immediately there, right? Boom. Okay. There we go. And so let's see. When we have since it's a static class, we can access this from anywhere, and it saves between our scenes. And I'm just basically saying if it's a new game, we can return, so we can cancel or jet out of this start loop because we don't want to load this. If it's not a new game and if we're loading a game, we're gonna actually load the player. Like I said, that this load player doesn't actually load anything. It just calls the function that loads it and then puts the data into the player. So hopefully that makes sense. Because basically all we're doing is saying instead of actually loading it, we're just not. Save that as well. Any more questions?
Everything made sense to me. I just need to kind of dig around in the code.
Right, yeah. No, I'm sorry I can't do a better job of explaining some of these things, especially with the binary formatters. I can't really discuss, or I can't really go down the, what is it, mind or rabbit hole that is that specific class, just because it's all very, what is it? It's all very techy. Realistically, this is all you need to know. I'm going to go ahead and, like I said, I'm going to comment some things on here. Hopefully you guys can get a better understanding of what everything does. And yeah. Thank you for coming. All right.
Thanks for the show. Let's see. Probably next weekend.
Right on. Yeah.
I can't. So org days is in like.
Oh, the
3 days,
fundraising.
right?
The fundraising day.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's on this coming Tuesday. You don't have to be there. It's fine. I'm just having it. Gavin and I think Kenneth said you guys would be interested in going to show off what you have.
So are you gonna like make a build of our game and then show it off? I know.
Excuse me. The idea is you got if you can't be there the whole time, just send me a file. But ideally, you guys have a build that you want to show off, and all you have to do is just show up, play it on the computer, and then since we can't collect funding, we're just gonna say, hey, check us out as a club, and maybe follow us, right? Get ourselves promoted. If you don't want to present it yourself, but you want to still show off your game, you can send me a file, or I can just download your GitHub. Let me know which, and then I can go ahead and just show it off from there. Hopefully that makes sense, sir.
Yeah. That's fun.
Yep.
Do you want to go on Tuesday? Hang out or?
be able to. I
Okay.
don't know yet.
Yeah. You know, Becker, I definitely can't. I have work basically through the entire thing, so. Alright, cool.
Yeah, I'll send you guys a message if I can make it there or not.
Yeah, no pressure. It sounds like we're already gonna have the 3 people there, so that's enough. It's basically just gonna be like one of those little like tables
Yeah.
out in the quad, right? Yeah. And then we'll probably have a couple laptops on there with our games on them.
Right. Right.
Cool.
All right.
Alright. Yeah. I will talk to you guys later.
All right. Sounds good. Have a good one, man. Bye bye.
See you guys.
See ya.
Alright, see ya.
See ya.